Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started before the music starts again. Welcome, everyone. Delighted to see you here. Thank you so much for coming today. My name is Holly Brewer, and I am the president of the University of Maryland chapter of the American Association of University Professors. UMD AAUP came together last year after years of dormancy out of a growing concern about the direction that UMD leadership has been taking the university. We seek to bring together graduate students, employees, and faculty, including librarians and research scientists, to advocate for a more just and safe workplace for all of us. We are delighted to share this comprehensive financial analysis with you and the whole University of Maryland community. Thanks to all who helped fund this. We commissioned this analysis earlier this year in an effort to better understand why so many constituencies across campus have grown increasingly discontented with the direction of the university and the way it has been spending its money. We wanted to understand why there never seems to be enough money to hire more full-time, well-paid faculty or to pay our graduate student employees living wages, but never any shortage of money for high administrative salaries or athletics. This financial analysis answers these and many other questions. We are so grateful to our members and to those who help fund this, especially the University of Maryland Staff Union, AFSCME Local 1072, and the Fearless Student Employees, what a great name, who together helped us raise the money to commission this report, as well as all of the many of you I see here today who gave smaller donations. In fact, we set out to raise $6,000 over the course of a month, and we raised $7,000 in less than 8 hours. It was incredible. I want to mention a couple of upcoming events, both of them a week from today. First of all, the undergraduate students in the United Students Against Sweatshops Local 54 has been active on campus trying to get a $15 minimum wage for all workers, including student workers. They're hosting a forum for all campus workers on Friday, April 29th from 12 to 2 in the Humanis room in the SAM Student Union. And I know they would love to see AAUP supporters there, and we'll put a link in the chat. And on the same day at 3 p.m., April 29th at 3 p.m., AAUP is hosting a forum for PTK faculty on our campus involved in instruction. We are inviting all instructional PTK to come and share their concerns and aspirations and to hear about how campus AAUP campaigns can further their interests. And we'll put a link to the chat, a link to that in the chat as well. Without further ado, I want to introduce the author of the report, the star of our show today, Professor Howard Bunsis. He is professor of accounting at Eastern Michigan University, where he specializes in governmental, nonprofit, and financial accounting. He has a PhD in accounting from the University of Chicago, an MBA from the University of Chicago, and a law degree from Fordham Law School. He's been amazingly involved in AAUP activities. He's the past chair of AAUP Collective Bargaining Congress between 2009 and 2017. He's past treasurer of the National AAUP, and he has made more than 100 presentations around the country on the financial health of colleges and universities. Thank you so much for joining us, Howard.
You're welcome. Let me share my screen now, if I could. So I don't know, how many of you guys have this. I hope a lot of you do. And if not, my view on this is it's being recorded and you guys have the document, and it's yours to do with as you please. And so you could type messages into the chat as we go, and I'll be bouncing around a little throughout the document, but try to keep you abreast of where we're going and where we're heading, and trying to keep cognizant of some time restraints. And I am going to focus a lot on the graphs. There's a lot of data and tables, and we'll do a couple of those, but for the most part, I'm going to focus more on the graphs because I think it works better with a group this size. And obviously willing to answer questions you guys have even after the presentation. Individually, you guys know how to find me. I'm easy to find. And in case you're wondering about my accent, I am born and bred in New York. So, and certainly I spent plenty of time in Maryland, AUP, unfortunately now we haven't met for a couple of years. We're meeting again in June, but family lives in Bethesda, and so I spent a lot of time in Maryland. And let's get to it. So this is on page 3, and just want to go over the conclusions first. And I think this first sentence is really important, is that the University of Maryland and College Park and the system is in very strong financial condition. Why? Reserves, cash flows, not too much debt, enrollment in good shape, and decent state support. And they generate a lot of cash. The bond rating is remarkably high. Now, the bond rating is only from the system. College Park doesn't have a bond rating, only the system does, but College Park is a major part of the system. There are other campuses, as you know, and there are some slides in here that deal with the size compared to the other campuses. So thank you, Mark, for that on the increase for 23. Yeah, this is done before 23. We knew about 23. We knew about 22 with the appropriation going to the system. You know, states around the country are flush with cash for a lot of different reasons. And it's good to see some higher ed support. This blue one, this third bullet point here, there was a decline in auxiliary revenue. Auxiliaries are called, that's the word, housing, dining, parking, and athletics. But total revenues were still stable. And there was COVID support, both from the federal and state governments. And investment income did well and helped to alleviate these declines. And we saw a big rebound in students living on campus, as we'll show you. Enrollment, it's remarkable. So a university this size keeps increasing enrollment like this. And there's the thing about the state of Maryland has a AAA bond rating. And I'm not supporting Larry Hogan's candidacy for anything. I'm just saying what the bond rating is. I'm sure you guys have not so wonderful thoughts about your governor, but there's a lot worse around the country. If I could divert for a second, I'm been engaged in the last several weeks with trying to get collective bargaining in the state of Colorado for higher education workers. And we're really struggling to get that done and get the legislature there to support us. So think of us as you guys do your meeting, talk about your meetings, and maybe you'll read about something going on in Colorado. I know Colorado's far away, but just think about workers who can't get collective bargaining at all. And so we're trying real hard there. Obviously, Maryland's got a similar problem also with the full-time faculty, but there's a lot of unions on your campus, and not the case in Colorado. Big increase in the number of admins, but decrease in the number of tenure-track faculty and other employees, as we'll look at. And the salaries of these top admins are very high and going up faster than other salaries. There's a shift within the faculty in favor of non-tenure track versus tenure track. Number of graduate teaching assistants has risen. I know there's a lot of grad assistants on this call. And I obviously was not obviously, but I was one of them. I was a graduate teaching assistant 174 years ago at the University of Chicago. I was a grad teaching assistant. So I certainly, several years, and know what it's like. And yeah, it was not great. And I certainly know what that's like, to work hard, not get that respect, not have much authority, and don't get paid very much. At least that's the way it was for me. I don't know how different it is for you guys who are grad assistants, but it was not easy. It was not easy at all. And I certainly don't remember those days fondly. I'll be honest with you. There's no fondness about them. So I know what you guys are going through. I lived it. First, the Big Ten tiers. Athletics is a big issue. I'm a huge sports fan, so I'm not against athletics at all, but I am against the spending that is done in college sports. So that is a problem. So I want to just briefly get an overview. Just before I go into the priorities and the expenses, I just want to give you guys an overview of a couple of things. And this is on page 16. And these are the reserves over time. And you can see how they generally have gone up, and the pandemic hurt a little bit, but not that much. And this level, as we show in other slides, of almost $700 million in unrestricted reserves. And just tremendous. And think someone has a question in Q&A. No. Okay. Oh, yeah. I'll see the question in the chat. And you can see the level here going from $500 million up to 700 million in 8-9 short years. And they are very significant in size, as we'll see. And just to give you a sense of the bond rating, there's the bond rating AA1, and you can see the date. It's fairly recent. Well, not that recent, but it's certainly post worst of pandemic is the point, that things were good. One thing that the admin is going to say is this fourth one here. The reason we're in such good shape is because we watch over things. We don't spend too crazily. That's one of the things they always claim to say. But this kind of level, the level of reserves they have is really off the charts high, which is why they have the high, which is really the number one reason why they have the high bond rating that they do, that the system does. And now, this may surprise you. This is the Big Ten. The peers would show the administration said that the Big Ten, which obviously is 14 schools, are their peers. And you can see Maryland system is with the majority, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, well, half, a little more than half, just about exactly half. And Indiana, Purdue, and Michigan have AAA bond ratings. Let me say this, I live in Ann Arbor, we live in Ann Arbor, and I teach at Eastern Michigan. I've done a lot of work with the unions, the graduate student union and the lecturers union, the non-tenure track union at U of M, University of Michigan, and they cry poverty every single day, despite having that. And I'm sure I have no illusions that the administration in College Park does not cry poverty all the time, because they all do. And they all have these incredible bond ratings. And the reason they all have the incredible bond ratings is simple. They generate a lot of cash flow and they have incredible reserves. They just don't like spending money on the people that do the work. That's really the bottom line. In terms of, this is the S&P distribution. So Standard & Poor's, these are all public and private universities as of 12/31/2021, so just a couple months ago. And this is where Maryland is out. You can see, and the publics are the lighter blue. So pretty well. And this is Moody's, the two big bond raters. And this is where Maryland is at for Moody's. And you can see again, in very strong shape. So that's just that background. And you guys wanted to start here on 73, is where you guys wanted to start. And looking at expenses and the priorities. So I'm sorry to start with some terrible numbers here, but it does help. So I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9 years of data. And the total expenses were 1.6 million right there, and just over 2 million in 2021. And auxiliaries did take a hit. They spent less, they brought in less, they spent less because students' housing and dining and other things were lower than they were in the past, for whatever reasons that they had to be. But there's a lot of things going into that besides just housing and dining. There's also conferences and things of that nature, and that's what's written down here. Now these are the total expenses, and these expenses include everything. That's what's written in the text box below. What counts? Like what counts in this? What counts in these things? Well, we're using what's called IPEDS data for the categorization. IPEDS stands for Integrated Post-Secondary Education Data System of the U.S. Department of Education. That's what it stands for. And sorry, there it is. And I highlight the following expenses: instruction, research, institutional support. That one is pure them, if I'm allowed to use that. These are not, this is one, so the number, let me use the chat again. The number 2026 770,760. There's no zeros. That should be a comma. So I don't get that comma right. Comma. That is 2,026,770,760 dollars. I could type it out like that. That's what that is. That's a lot of money. It's a big school. Any way you look at it, that's a large place. University of Maryland is a large place. And this data comes from iPads. And you can just see how it's gone up over time, but we'll look at the individuals. But the point is, these categories are standard. Institutional support is pure administration, mostly upper level administration. Instruction and research does not include, it includes the people who do the work. It's generally not the administrators overseeing. It's not the deans. It's not the associate deans. Department chairs, department heads are typically not in there either, though they can be. And research is the people doing the research and all the expenses that go with it. Public service, the media arm of the university. Academic support, librarians and deans and associate deans are all in one. Librarians who know everything goes on at a university, as you guys who work in the place know that the librarians always know everything that's happening. And they, unfortunately, for the way the financial statements have been created in higher education, librarians and deans are in the same category. So and student services includes both people who do advising on the ground and also all the administrators in student services. So these three functions here, public service, they are mixtures of both staff and union, mostly union workers, and administrative and non-union workers. Whereas there's no union at all in institutional support. There's no way there's unionized employee in there. And this is all us. So those are the things we tend to focus on because they're pure. But these costs also include everything. They include these things here, allocated costs. Any idea what preferred academic? It's hard to know. The question in the chat about what is causing academic support to go up so much, how much of this librarians, how much of this deans. We'll look later in a couple minutes, we're gonna look at the number of people. So that will give us some clue. So, and these are just category definitions, and you can see librarians and deans are in there, the next two slides. This is a percentage distribution, the percent of total expenses. And you can see what I like to do is, I think it would surprise people that instruction is only 28.7% of total expenses. And the core mission, instruction and research, you add those together, it's barely more than half. But we're going to focus more on the salary components of this. This is just a look at this graphically. Graphs, I think, help. Pie chart on all the expenses gives you a sense of it. And looking at the expenses over time. So what I did here is I broke up the time period from, I analyzed 13 to 21. So I broke it up into 13 to 17, 17 to 21. AFSCME staff is not going to be institutional support. And the foundation is not in here. This does not include anything with the foundation. So the foundation is completely separate. Nothing I have here has anything to do with the foundation. The foundation is totally a separate entity. And I have some stuff on it. We'll get to it next section when we get to the foundation. But the foundation is not part of this at all. And it's not, and there's no way the AFSCME workers are part of institutional support, or they should not be. So anyway, this is, I broke up 13 to 17, 17 to 21, and then the longer period, the whole 8-9 year period, depending on how you count. And so I looked at institutional support, all the other items, instruction, research, auxiliaries. Auxiliaries went down here because of housing, dining, etc., and athletics. But when you look for all three, the two sub periods and the total period, the largest increase is in institutional support. So may not be a surprise. Let me just go to the picture on cash flows. So these are all the cash inflows every year and the cash outflows every year. Now, what counts? What is a cash inflow and what is a cash outflow? Well, that's what this stuff is. State appropriation, research grants, tuition and fees, auxiliaries, other receipts, COVID grants. You can see the COVID grants right here, big numbers, 25 million and 59 million, 55 million in these 2 years. Pell grants, which is just tuition, just in a different way the tuition comes at them. And these are the cash outflows: payments to employees, which includes benefits, payments to suppliers and contractors, interest expense, and the total cash outflows. And you can see it did go down a little here, but still, in a bad year, they generated $83 million in all the cash in versus all the cash out. And most people, when Moody's does the analysis, they don't even include interest. I do, because it does have to be paid every year. So just incredible how much cash they generate. 141. I mean, every year. And every year, they bring in more than they take out. This is why the university and the system has a AA bond rating, because they generate these cash flows every year. And this is why the reserves grow, because every year they pocket money. Now, it's nice to have reserves. It's nice to have more than you take in. But at the same time, crying poverty when this is happening, that's the problem that I have. The money goes, we'll do that in the balance sheet. We're going to see when we look at the balance sheet, Emily Fox asked the question, we're going to see the money grows in investment accounts, not the foundation that grows in the investment accounts that the university controls. Just keeps going up. They just get more and more cash and invest it in the stock market, et cetera. That's where it all goes. Has to go somewhere. And so this is just a graph of those cash flows. All right, now we look at the salary only component of the expenses. So let me just go back. I hate to go back. There's instruction, and I had to stop in 2020 because we don't have 2021 IPEDS data. So that 364 million, okay? When you go back to the instruction data, the instruction expense, sorry, I'm getting back there. I'm getting there. Slowly. You see it's 575 million. So of that 575, 360 is pure salary. No allocation of anything, no estimation of anything, no allocation of anything, pure salary, pure cash. And so I'm getting back there. And we can see where the salaries are going. And this is the distribution. The percent of salaries going to instruction, to research, to institutional support. And instruction and research, when you look at salaries only, is about that, which is not that atypical from universities around the country and in the Big Ten. You can see it's generally gone down, but not by much. Institutional support, pretty stable for this 5-year period. I don't go before 15, before 16, because IPEDS changed the way they did the reporting structure and included different things. So this is what we got. 5 years, which is still pretty good news. Updated to look at. And so the question was in the earlier about academic support. Someone I think facetiously said, it's not the librarians. Yeah, I doubt it's them either. So these are the change in the salaries for this 5-year period. Yeah, I sincerely doubt that's the librarians. All right, number of faculty. And you can see I'm using the Institutional Research and Planning Assessment, IRPA, Institutional Research Planning Assessment. That's where the data comes from. And the folks who work in that, I don't know who these people are, obviously, but they tend to be not political. They tend to be just people that do the work. And so the reason I show these two graphs side by side, it just shows you how you can play with graphs to show very different things. Here, I started the scale at 4,200. So it's only scale goes from 4,200 to 4,700. This scale goes from 0 to 5,000. It looks like nothing's moving. this scale looks like, boom, a big drop. What is the truth? You know, does this represent the truth? They're both true. They both occurred. Just to show you what you get. So I think for our purposes, more what we see here is real significant differences in non-tenure track versus tenure track. Change in salaries, there's no inflation. It's just salaries. It's just whatever spent. Inflation is another story, obviously. It's not irrelevant, especially, you know, for most of my career as doing this and teaching, no one cared about inflation. It didn't matter. Now, you know, we haven't had inflation like we have now since I was in college 40 years ago. Oh, okay, more than 40 years ago. But did I just say 40 to round nicely? Yeah. But now it certainly is an issue. But no, those numbers are not adjusted for inflation. We got to start doing that. The point that Karen is making in the chat. I think we have to start doing some inflation adjustments for 21, 22 as things get out of hand. So this slide here on 89, long-term changes in total faculty versus total enrollment. So here's the premise here. So, and I'm using 22 here, that 20, just put in the chat, 2022 is fall 2021 enrollment data. And the fiscal year for fall 21, for fall 20, so I can see what I'm writing, is 2022 from July 1, 2021 to June 30th, 2022. And so nice enrollment increases, both sub-periods, not as much here, but still, we still have enrollment increases. And there was an increase in faculty for the first sub-period, but then a decrease, and certainly not the same. Total faculty is not the same, going up as much as enrollment. And then when you look at, you break down the total faculty into tenure track versus non-tenure track, and this is all security. People who are non-tenure track faculty, which I have been one in the past, I've been around long enough to certainly understand that role and the lack of security that you have in that role. Having gone through it, I can't tell you, having been both, you know, I've lived it. It is a big difference. We're going to get there. I'm not ignoring. No, I'm going to get there. Can't do everything in one slide. We're going to get to part-time and graduate assistants. We're going to get there. But this is the full-time faculty right now, and you can see tenure track. So not good. Okay, so now let's look at grad. I know there's a lot of grad people here, and grad research and grad teaching, and these are numbers, but I think let's just look at the graphs. And I think grad teaching has mirrored the changes in enrollment. And what I don't know is, send my chat to everyone. Okay. What I don't know is the percentage of the IRPA does not put out, the Office of Institutional Research Planning and Assessment does not put out the percentage of credit hours taught by graduate assistants. I'm sure that data exists, but that data is not publicly available. And you can see the change in in research assistants versus teaching assistants. It's a pretty significant difference as to what's going on in these two sub-periods and then overall for grad assistants. And so here I try to get at the part-time faculty, and this is important because it really points out how little the part-time faculty and grad assistants are making. Now, this isn't perfect, but it's my best attempt to use the data that's published both on IRPA and IPEDS to figure out what part-time faculty and what graduate assistants are actually being compensated. What's the compensation? And so what I do, and just bear with me here, I take the total compensation for all instructional employees, take out what's paid to the full-time faculty. And so what's left is what's paid to both the part-time faculty and graduate teaching. Now there's a caveat here right here. Full-time faculty, I don't know how much overload teaching there is at College Park. There always is. Everywhere there's overload teaching where a faculty member may have a 3-2 load, but they teach a 4th class one semester and they get paid some. Where does that dollar go in here? Does that dollar go here? That's unclear to me. But this is a decent estimate still. So this is part-time instruction right here. I told you I'd get to the part-time faculty. You just got to give me a chance. And these are the grad teaching. So this is the number of people. We're talking 4,000 human beings, again, which I used to be one. So I certainly know it, lived it. And this is the dollars paid. I think this overestimates somewhat what people are paid on average, but this is it. The average human being who's doing this incredible work and getting not much for it. So that's what you're getting. And if you're teaching, it depends how many classes you teach a year, obviously, but I do think this is higher. And there's nothing I can't parse out from the point I want to make is from this number, some of that undoubtedly is overload for the full-time people. So if this number is lower right there, then this number is lower and this number is lower. These numbers in the middle are good. Here's the grad teaching. You can see we had that slight increase. Now it's down a little from 2021, but over the time period, still pretty good. Part-time instruction, 1,000 now down, decreased last year, but just under 1,000 part-time faculty. So just under 4,000. Well, there were 4,000 right around these 3 years, or just about 4,000 every year in 18, 19, and 20, and a little less than that. So using the iPads data and comparing it to what's on the Institutional Research and Planning Assessment site of College Park, this is my best estimate trying to get to this, because I know it's important to so many of you. So the question is, undergraduate student workers? No, that's a good question. They do have something now, to answer the question Emily Fox has put in the chat. They do have, in the last 2 years now, besides graduate teaching, it used to be graduate research and graduate teaching. Now they have graduate all other categories. A lot of, because graduate students do more than just work in teaching and research. And so they have added other categories, but not of the, IPEDS does not have undergraduate student worker data, to answer the question directly. So, okay, more on number of employees. Again, using the Institutional Research and Planning Assessment site, using what's called SOC, which is a fancy acronym for Standard Occupational Classification. And I don't know what to say about any of this stuff, but other than this didn't happen. They didn't let go of 300 management employees from here to here. You could see what they've done here. This is not my data. Let's be clear. I just take the data and I put it into Excel and I present and I put it in a form that we all can see. That's all I do. I don't change anything. They just reclassified a whole bunch of management employees in this year. Now, maybe there was a good justification for it. I am not implying that there's any nefarious motives or any deceit or any of that going on. However, as someone who does this a lot, and when I see this, I just get a little skeptical. What are you doing here? I mean, to see all these changes, to see all these changes from 19 to 20 and the way this is presented, it could be new people who worked in the office of IRPA that year and decided to do things differently. It could be something as benign as that. And maybe this is the truth and more like the way it's supposed to be. I don't know the answers to that, but to say that the number of management employees decreased by almost 300, well, we know that did not occur. So the question James asks, have I seen other, this is what I'm looking at here, James, to answer your question directly. This is not uncommon, but I will say this, James, this kind of change, that's big. I've certainly seen, I'll be honest with you, James and others, almost everyone I look at, almost every time I do one of these, there's always something like this going on. There's always some, change, there's always a change, but this change is really just, come on, something's going on here. Why did you all of a sudden reclassify a whole bunch of people from management to probably business and finance operations? And you can see there's a lot of people in there. So, and notice, by the way, the number of employees from 19 to 20 of non-instructional employees, 5,700, it hardly changed. It hardly changed. So they just reshuffled how they were allocated. So what I did is I decided, okay, I've got this break here where they kind of did things differently. So I looked at 15 to 19 only first, and then we'll look at the other years in a second. And you can see a big increase in management. These categories, these are IPED's categories of employment. And I can't say for sure where the AFSCME workers would be. My guess is they're in the AFSCME workers, you guys are in here and in here, knowing what I know, and some probably in here as well. But anyway you cut it, management went up more than anybody else. And now I looked at the last 3 years. So just to show you what I did here, the reason I did these two sub periods in time because the people that did this kind of made me do it. They kind of changed the way they did everything for 20. So I did 15 to 19 and then 20 to 22. That's what I did here. And 15 to 19, bigger increase in management than anything else. 20 to 22, bigger increase in the number of management employees than anything else. And everybody else went down. This is all pandemic related, dealing with it, et cetera, et cetera. You guys make your own inferences about what you see here. And these are the average salaries, 2021, for the different employee groups for fiscal 21. We don't have fiscal 22 in IPEDs yet, but this is what it is there. And I added the grad assistants and the part-time faculty right here for that year. And how can you tell that management categorization changed? Well, I just know they did not lay off 282 management employees. There's no way that occurred. And since the total number of employees increased, it tells me that they recategorized employees from management to other categories. That's my interpretation of the data, which I think is valid. So this is the full-time faculty, 122 grand for all the full-time faculty. These are different employee groups who are non-instructional: computer engineering and science, healthcare, service, legal, arts, media, business and finance ops. There's librarians, maintenance, office admin support, service, transportation, and part-time faculty. Okay, so now you guys wanted me to bounce back to there were some questions earlier, and we'll go right to them now. Looking at the balance sheet, and this is College Park only. So I'm looking here at the balance sheet. We're going to look at the foundation in a second. So again, going back all the way to 13 to 21, and almost $4 billion of assets. Net assets are, a lot of those are reserves, and we already looked at and saw we're talking about 800 million of that is free reserves, and then debt. This is you can't look at this balance sheet and say everything's great, but you can certainly look at this balance sheet and say, boy, they're certainly not in trouble. I mean, come on. You got assets going from 2.6 billion to 3.6 billion. And you got liabilities going from 700 million to just under $1 billion. And the net assets from 1.8 all the way to 2.6. So it's a pretty healthy picture. And so I'm not going to talk about the pension adjustments. That's technical stuff that I'd rather, I mean, obviously I do it and willing to talk to anyone about it. So these are the assets themselves. Now, the question was asked earlier, I think it was Emily Fox asked the question, where's the money going? Where are those excess reserves going? I think I got Emily's name right. And look at cash and investments: 715, 688, 695, 768, 727, 810, 911, 956, over $1 billion. So from 2013 to 2021, cash and investments having nothing to do with the foundation have grown $300 million. That's nice. At the same time, there's also been a nice building increase. This reddish or orangish line are the capital assets, which is mostly the buildings. It includes vehicles and things of that nature, but it's mostly the buildings. And they've gone from 1.7 billion, sorry for the numbers, up to 2.3. And I have in the text box on the side, over the last 3 years, we've seen a renovation of Cole Fieldhouse. I assume, does Maryland basketball still play there? Yes, no, maybe. Not anymore. Where do they play? If I could ask. Do they play at the MCI Center where the Wizards play? Can't imagine they do that. But the Xfinity Center on campus. Okay. Who plays at Cole Fieldhouse? Anybody? Someone must play there. Football practice. The question on the management employees, does the graph 97 include all the shuffle employees managed? Yeah, I mean, from 15 to 19 included, as they did the classification before, and from 20 to 22 includes a new classification. So that's why I broke that up. And the last graph that you saw was just the 22 management employees. The 2022, roughly 200 management employees, or 130 management employees, each making over 200,000. So these are I don't know if you guys, I don't know if you recognize these buildings, the names of these, but they don't mean anything to me. If I came to your campus, look, you know what I always say? My general flippant comment about flippant comment about how a university is doing. If you see a lot of cranes on campus, they're doing well. Have you guys seen cranes on campus? Are there construction cranes on your campus? Then you're doing well. There you go. So many cranes. There you go. Okay, now the foundation. Okay. So again, this is a lot of you guys have asked about the foundation. So what I did here, the lighter or sharper green line is cash and investments outside the foundation. And these are what's in the foundation. They each got about $1 billion. So there's $1 billion in cash and investments having nothing to do with the foundation. And there's another $1 billion that have anything to do with the foundation. And all the reserves in the analysis I did, I do not include anything about this $1 billion in the foundation. Completely separate. So any claim that, oh, we have reserves because we have, no, not one penny of reserves that I put in this presentation comes from the foundation. Not a single penny. But still, it's nice that they have a foundation that spits off some money and that has $1 billion of assets lying around. And that's grown from $500 million in 13. So, okay, that's that. Now I want, next, you guys on the agenda, you guys want to go to sports, which is, now I'm assuming that the reason you guys were so interested in athletics, and I think I heard Holly mention it in the discussing AAUP. And by the way, as someone who's been with AAUP forever, I bleed AAUP red and certainly loved hearing what you had to say, Holly, about AAUP, and so thrilled that you guys are back as a chapter. And maybe one day you'll even have me out there and present to you guys and say hi to you guys, and certainly would love doing that, and would have done that if wasn't COVID restrictions here. Certainly would have loved to have seen all of you in person and met all of you. in person. But you guys were interested in athletics and the overspending. And I said, I'm a huge sports fan. I grew up in New York, born in Brooklyn, grew up in Long Island. College sports was not big for us growing up, though there's always the Long Island, Maryland connection of Boomer Esiason, who you guys probably don't even know who he is. Does anyone know who Boomer Esiason is? No? No. Yes, Bengals. Yes, from Long Island. Yes, okay. And went to Maryland, as I think you guys know, and works in New York media today. I've never met him. I don't know him, so I'm not going to claim to know. But certainly that connection. He's a big Hockey Ranger fan, as am I. So very excited. His name is outside the stadium. This is what I'm going to say about sports and athletics. I think universities, the administration, if they're here today, and they always somehow wind up on these presentations, by the way, no matter how much you guys control it, or they get copies of it, which is fine with me. But they will say the following about sports. They will say that even if at Maryland, it doesn't look like we're making money, the notoriety you get, it's the front porch, it's the window to the university. I ain't buying with a place like Maryland. I don't think Maryland needs sports to introduce it to the rest of the region and the rest of the country. Maryland is a major research institution and a large institution on its own. I don't think whether Maryland is in the Big Ten or the ACC, I just don't see it helping the rest of the university. And there's two schools that made bets in 2014 on athletics. One was Rutgers and the other is Maryland. And from my perspective, as a big sports fan who spent a lot of time at Rutgers and working with them now as well, I don't think the bets have paid off. I don't think the bet from the ACC, from Maryland, from the ACC to the Big Ten has paid off. And I think administrators, again, if I'm an administrator at Maryland, what I'm pointing to is, but look how well we do in basketball. Well, let's look how well you're doing financially. Let's look at these numbers. So what I have here, and I'm going to get to the graphs in a second. The two yellow highlighted rows here, student fees and direct institutional support. That the student fee is every time an undergraduate student takes a class, and probably a graduate student as well, takes a class at Maryland, a percentage of the student fee goes to the Department of Intercollegiate Athletics. Whether those students use tickets to buy tickets to go to games. I don't know if they charge you guys to go to games as students. They probably don't. They probably do a little bit at Maryland. But the four sports that charge money, men's basketball, women's volleyball, and Division I football, they're just not generating enough ticket revenue. And these student fees, this is not fake money. This is real money coming from the students to support athletics, because as we'll see, the other revenues in athletics and this direct institutional support from all of you, guarantees are they're both revenues and expenses. Like, you'll pay a lower level school to come to your place, but sometimes if you do like a 2-for-1 or a 3-for-1 with a bigger school from another conference, they'll give you a little money, but you see it's not that much. This is money raised just for athletics. This is the big one. And the switch was here. So yes, look at that. Look at the NCAA and conference distribution. I mean, I live here and we live in Michigan. I get the Big Ten Network. I think they do a great job. And like watching them and all that kind of stuff. But yes, the increase in NCAA, this is mostly the Big Ten right there. But you can see over the last, this is not just the pandemic. This is not the pandemic that did us in, made things worse. And the other revenues, as you see here. And so this stuff is, a lot of this increased stuff is the Big Ten Network as well, which advertises and brings all this revenue. These are the individual expenses. And the reason I'm able to break this up, Matt, you were able to provide to me this data, which is very specific data from the NCAA management report, which the USA Today database, which when I usually do these, kind of condenses what you see on on the screen here into 3 or 4 categories, but here we get all the different categories, and including the breakdown between coaches' salaries and athletic admin salaries. And I mean, just look at this from 13 million and 11. I mean, yeah, they went to the Big Ten, but in order to stay in the Big Ten, you got to pay coaches what U of M pays Jim Harbaugh $7 million a year. You got to pay your coach not $7 million, but you got to keep up with them. And a lot of this, why is athletic aid an expense? Well, let's face it, if the athletic aid wasn't going to these student athletes, and they're great, a lot, especially the ones who play softball and gymnastics, they're great, but they don't get full rides. Most of this aid is for those football, basketball dominate. And football's the big one. Team travel, oh my goodness gracious, game expenses, recruiting, fundraising, promotion, etc. Where would coach buyouts, Turgeon, $5 million? Yeah. I got to believe that's in here. Now, we're not going to see that yet, but Andrew put the question, I don't know if everyone can see it, on the buyouts. And I don't know if he quit or got fired, and then Danny Manning took over. You guys could have a new coach, right? Do you already name a new coach to replace Danny Manning? I don't even know. I should know that. But I know Danny Manning was the coach, and I assume the new coach is coming in, whoever that may be. But the buyouts should be right in here when we look at 21, and when we get 21 and 22, the buyouts should be in there. But they're not in here yet, but they definitely should be in here. So let's get to the pictures. The not a new coach yet. Okay. I've coached basketball my whole life, love the game, but I coach Special Olympics basketball, so I'm not so sure that would qualify me to coach at University of Maryland's level. So how could I do worse? Anyway, these are the expenses. These are the revenues, the direct athletic revenues. I do not include the student fee as a revenue, because that's, what the student fee is at Ohio State? Zero. You know what the student fee is at Michigan? Zero. You know what the student fee is at almost every other Big Ten school? Zero. So, because they generate enough other revenue to cover athletics, as we'll see. And these are the deficits. And it was smaller in 20. The revenues went down, expenses went down quite a bit. But this is the subsidy in dollars. This is the percentage of expenses that have to be covered by the mission. Of the $92 million of expenses, so at other Big Ten universities, well, okay, let me go to the peers. So the question's about the peers, so I know I'm going out of order. You can kill me if you like, but the question was asked, so I'm going to bring it up. The question was asked about peers in athletics. So here we go. This, I guess, will show it best. The dollar subsidy in 19 and 20, there's Rutgers, there's Maryland. See Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Nebraska, Purdue, nothing. Indiana, little in the Iowa. These are all, none of these places have any student fee money at all. Nothing. Some of these do. You can see who you're with: Rutgers, Maryland, Illinois, Minnesota, Wisconsin, a little bit. That's what this looks like in sports. And it's pretty unfortunate. I am not suggesting that Maryland get out of the Big Ten. My point is this: they never, let me get to the right page here. They never should have got in the Big Ten in the first place, is the point I'm making. And with this graph I'm back to slide number 103. This graph demonstrates. So what do we got? This is the NCAA money, going back all the way from 13 again. This is the NCAA money, big increase when you move to the Big Ten. Ticket sales. No offense, not enough people pay to go to your games. That's the bottom line. That is why there is an athletic deficit at the University of Maryland College Park, because not enough people pay to go to football and basketball games. It's that simple. Contributions aren't great, but not terrible. and the total revenues and the total expenses. And you could see they went down. This is the pandemic. The pandemic actually helped Maryland a little bit. When we get to 21, this is going to jack up here, and 22, and the new coach in basketball just going to keep going up. And I don't think the revenue is going to go up anywhere close. My view, my prediction is that this deficit for 21 and 22 will be closer to that $25 billion than it was before the pandemic. And I am, solution-wise, I am not suggesting that Maryland get out of the Big Ten. Like I said, you can't unbreak an egg. They never should have gotten in the first place. But once you're in, the solution, well, yeah, get more, win more, get more people in. No, just stop. Just because Michigan gives Jim Harbaugh $10 million a year, you don't have to give your football coach that kind of money. You don't have to. It's not written in stone, and you can get a good coach who can win for not that kind of money. That's my view. And so these are the total athletic expenses, instruction, and research over these years. So you really see the big difference. And versus salaries of the athletic administrators and the coaches versus instruction and research salaries over that time. Okay, let me go back now, change gears, and look at some ratios. So what I'm doing here, let me go back here to 22. These are the 6 ratios, the 6 variables, shall we say, that Moody's uses now to assess overall financial health of an institution. And I'm extrapolating for College Park, not the system. You guys were very clear to me that you wanted just College Park. So with the yellow shadings in this box, this table, shall we say, where does College Park, if College Park, not University of Maryland system, but if College Park was its own entity, where would they be? And they would get very large, they do very well for operating revenue. The operating performance, EBITDA, earnings before interest, depreciation, and amortization, and tax, and depreciation and amortization. EBITDA is a measure, and very similar to cash flows from operations. And in 2022, Moody's has changed from using cash flows from operations, which I'd shown you earlier, to EBITDA. I don't agree with their move. They didn't ask me my opinion. They're similar. They're both trying to figure out what's the cash that is being generated from operations. And you can see the margin here is in the, what does a margin mean? A margin is EBITDA, shall we say, cash flows in the numerator, and total revenues in the denominator. It's like a profit margin for a real company. So if a company makes 10 cents on the dollar, there would be 10%. So Maryland is taking in excess cash every year, somewhere between there. And we'll get, we'll look at the real number in a second. How much cash and investments, again, having nothing to do with the foundation. Compare cash and investments to operating expenses is kind of like trying to get at reserves. Is there too much debt, and are they covering the debt? So you can see College Park, Moody's, College Park has an AA, the system has an AA1. College Park would be a little below that if it was separate, but still really, really strong. And these are the specific ratios themselves. So you can see the EBITDA margins, 13.6, 11.4, 12.9, 14.5. Those cash flow margins, you could see are just missing there. Still very good, very strong. And I'll just leave it at that. Okay, and then I discussed the ratios there. Okay, next, we'll talk about the state appropriation. Before I get to state appropriation, let me get to revenues, because let me get to the revenues first, then we'll do the state appropriation. So this is the revenue distribution. Let me get to the graph here. I'll start here on 36. I'll start with the pie chart. I think it's better to start, then we'll go back to the numbers. That's why I wanted to do it. So there you go. So look at the number one revenue source in both 21 and 17. I went to 21 in a very pre-pandemic-y kind of year. Grants and contracts. It's research grants. It includes NSF, National Science Foundation, NIH, National Institution of Health, Department of Defense, Health and Human Services grants, local grants, private contracts. All that stuff matters. State appropriation, tuition and fees. You can see in 17, those two are almost the same. Auxiliaries, housing, dining. You can see auxiliaries is a lot lower now than it was. Student union, athletics, etc. And then other minor revenues. And so those revenues are here. And you can see auxiliaries having this downward trend over the last 3 years. But when you look at the total number, the total current revenues, and I do not include, so what's excluded? What is excluded? State capital appropriation. What's also excluded are anything to the foundation. Yeah, I just want to be clear. There's nothing from the foundation that I'm including at all. Any capital gifts that people give, they give a building, I don't count that in current revenues, and Moody's doesn't count it either. People want to leave. I'm almost done. I promise you I'm almost done. You guys are making me sad. You want to leave so soon? We just met. Terrible. I'll be done before you know it. Thanks, Holly. It's very nice of you. You know how we are as teachers. You know, if one person hates us, we can't handle it. It's terrible. And so auxiliaries went down. What are these sales of educational departments? It's a weird, so just bear revenue from the sale of goods that are incidental kind of instruction, film rentals, scientific literary publications, testing services, university presses, dairy product, machine shop, all this kind of stuff. So, and I tell you kind of what these things are as well. Here you can see the drop in auxiliary. You can see the drop. But there's a state appropriation. And again, we know about 22 and 23. We know that these are both going up, which is good. So the decline in auxiliaries is entirely covered by grants and contracts, relief money, investment income. And we talk about these pie charts. And so this graph, so I'm just trying to look at pandemic, you know, just the year before, the 2 years before the pandemic, and then the pandemic, the effects of the pandemic itself. So from 18 to 19, total current revenues went up just under $100 million. The black bar are total revenues. That's the black bar. So you can see it's not basically flat here and then down here a little bit, about 100 million. And these are the individual ones. And the big one here, there's auxiliaries. There's auxiliaries. There's auxiliaries. But 19 to 20, they were covered, not covered so much here. But expenses went down as well. Gives you just a, and here I'm just giving you detail on the grants, on the grant revenues, and everything behind it. There's the COVID grants, federal, state, and local non-government. Pell grants are financial aid grants for lower income citizens. You can see those have not done great, have not increased very much. Yes. Yes, the answer to that question, Daniel Green, is absolutely yes. They'll definitely be in there. It's exactly what they'll definitely cover that. No doubt about it. That'd be precisely what it covered. I have a little thing here on HERF, on the federal money, just to give you a sense of how much money came in. 81 million came in total, 61 million from the feds in discretionary money. So it's pretty nice. 50 million to student aid, 112 million in total. I know it's one time, but I'm not saying it's the end of the world. I'm not saying it breaks everything down. But anyway, so let's talk about the state and then enrollment. So that's what we're going to do next. So now we're going to do the state and then enrollment. So let me get to that. So this just looks at the three main revenues over time. It's one of the strongest reasons why Maryland, College Park and the system, University of Maryland system have strong bond ratings is they don't put all their eggs in one basket. I've done a lot of work with very small private institutions that don't have unions, that have rejuvenated and strong AUP chapters. They have one revenue source, mostly tuition, and then the auxiliaries that go with tuition. That's it. University of Maryland College Park has tuition, even though it declined from here to here, but it also has research grants and contracts and a state appropriation. I'm not saying these three are exactly the same, but they're all pretty healthy. They're all bigger than $500 million. It's pretty nice. And that's one of the reasons why diversity is a strength in many ways, but it's certainly a strength when it comes to revenue and financial health of an institution. When something goes bad with one, you have two others to cover it up, to cover that decline, which is exactly what's happened at Maryland for the last couple of years. So this is, I put in here what I knew at the time, and someone put in the chat earlier that this has now been solidified. When I did this a couple of months back now, this is what we saw it going. Here you can see 22, and I'm using, so through 21, I have the red is the audit statements. I don't have any, there's no audited statements for 22 yet because we're not in that year. And the operating budget, by the way, you may have not heard me talk about the budget. Let me say this about budgets. The word starts with B and ends with S. I am not a budget person in any way, shape, or form. Budgets don't tell stories. Actual data, IPEDs, IRPA data, financial statements, they tell stories. And budgets, universities put budgets are whatever they think they are. The university could exclude and include anything they want. They could put out a budget that this is our budget, and they could exclude all the grants and the contracts and the sales of educational departments, saying that stuff doesn't really matter. And they can put out budgets that project expenses that are much higher than they really are going to be. So anyway, this is where we think the appropriation is going. And you really see what's going on here. There's their operating budget. They have a decline, but it's not really what happened. So I don't trust their budget at all. And this is just one thing on the other institutions within College Park. These are all the other institutions within the system. You can see College Park is a little more than a third of the whole thing. These are all the other institutions within the system. But again, we talked about this, myself and some of the leadership group here talked about it, and you guys definitely did not want much, you don't want any study of these other institutions. So we focused on College Park. So now I'm going to go just about the last thing here, enrollment, and I'll be quick. I'll just go to the pictures. Headcount enrollment. Looks like it's doing pretty well. And unfortunately, the last couple of years, not as good. So a little decline there, but still over the long period of time, very well. So undergrad driven. Undergrad's driving the whole thing. And again, I'm just going to go to the pictures. And this is demographically, you guys talked about some of these things being important to you. So undergrad, grad, white, minority, foreign, unknown. I don't quite know how unknown was classified. They had different ways. Either people didn't respond or they changed. It was kind of odd to me. That's a pretty large unknown. I usually don't see that with demographic data like this. They usually have things like 2 or more race and things of that nature, but they didn't have that here. So, and you can see grad students, just under 1/3 of grad students are foreign or international. That's the word they use, by the way, not my word. It comes from IRPA. All right. I broke down the changes in grad student type. So masters, doc professional practice. There's nothing here. Those changes are, you see that's a 0. That's why there's no bar, because there's no number. The number is 0. Grad certificate, doctoral research, advanced specialist, and then total grad. So I tried to break it down, and my guess is some of you on this call are some of these human beings. So I don't know how you feel about that. And then the research and this is the research and teaching assistant demographics. 40% of grad students have an assistantship. Stayed pretty steady over the last several years. And the research assistants are majority male. The teaching assistants are majority female. I'm not making any statement other than these are the facts. I am not making any inferences about that. Wouldn't know how. This is by college. I don't know what to say about this. It's a lot of data here. Let's just look at the graph. So this is the graduate enrollment by college. And I think a lot of you are on this call. Some of you are, and some of you, or if you're not, some of you are faculty or work in these colleges with grad students. So I don't know what to say other than that. The change in headcount by college over the time period. Okay, last thing here. Let's go to tuition and fee price. They don't give it away. Oh my goodness. This, we call it sticker price, almost $24,000. Oh my goodness. Out of state, 51,000. They certainly like to jack it to, I could tell you growing up in New York, a lot of New Yorkers from Long Island, where I'm from, definitely wanted to go to Maryland. A lot of did. Where at my high school, a lot of people went to Maryland. It was a big, so I don't know if that's true. Okay, that was 50 years ago. I don't know how true that is now. Do you guys still get kids from Long Island at school there? Yes, no, maybe. You getting Long Island kids as students at Maryland?
Yeah.
Anybody?
Yep.
Yep. Yeah. Not in there. Yeah. And we're obnoxious, right? We're totally obnoxious and annoying and all that. You could say it. You could say it. Very obnoxious. Thank you. Appreciate that support. Yeah, that's the way we were. So these, look at that fee. Look at that. Hello. Look at that. The total fees. Oh my goodness gracious. Isn't that unbelievable? The largest fee is athletics. This is that student fee. You got no choice when you go to school. You got to pay it. So. Student, you guys support all these things, but you support athletics more than the others. And again, I'm not anti-sports. There's no one more pro sports than me, but all right, graphs. This is interesting. The tuition's not going up very much. You can see it even, I put the graph up to 5. You can see total sticker price and tuition and fees. The legislature has a lot to do with this. They don't let them do it, even though it's technically a decision made by the administration in College Park. I don't know if they do it. The discount rate is that sticker price. That's the break. That's what Maryland takes home. And the discount rate, and you can see I write it in the text box. You can see what, there's my numerator as a positive number over the denominator, the gross is sticker price. So 20% off the sticker price. And it's the highest it's been, and we'll compare it to the peers in just a minute. And then lastly, the changes in just the worst. Howie, thank you so much for that, Howie. That's what they called me in high school, by the way. Anyway, tuition and fee revenue did go down here, but here's what we got going for 21-22, the fiscal year we're in now. We got a slight increase in enrollment. We got a baby increase in price. We're going to have the lime green bar prediction is going to be about here, 2, 3, 4%, somewhere my cursor is. So in 22, 2 of the 3 main revenue sources, state, tuition and fees going up fairly significantly. So, I'm showing you guys where things were in the past a little bit, but as we look to the current fiscal year and what we have for the legislature in 23, things are looking bright and brighter from a financial perspective for the University of Maryland College Park. And I'm not just saying that, those are the facts. And some last things on peers. Don't mean that. I meant to share that. The last thing on the peers, we did my favorite piece, of course. We did the athletic piece. And just let me get there. So I'll quickly go through these. There's a whole thing in the Chronicle of Higher Education. Should a private university be a peer of a public university and vice versa? I don't believe they should be. I think the revenue distributions are too different. But anyway, what states, this is the Big Ten, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, and you're the only school in Maryland. And this is how they're defined. Carnegie classification of research. People think of R1. Well, this is what they use now. Is there a hospital? Rutgers, yes. Ohio State, yes. So Michigan, yes, of course. And you guys are in a suburb. Everybody else is in a city. You guys are in a suburb. I don't know how you feel about that, but you are. Enrollment, you guys are slightly on the small side compared to the others. You're 10th out of 14 in undergrad, 11th in grad, 11th total. Change in enrollment over the last 3 years. And I went to each institution's Office of Institutional Research. So pandemic, during, post-pandemic, put it all together. Yeah, Purdue, how do you like that? So how do you feel about that? But just showing you facts. The endowment. There you go. All the way down there. These people believe they cry poverty in Michigan. They got a $17 billion endowment. Revenue distribution. How much do you spend on where you get your money from? Tuition and fees, the state. Maryland gets a bigger percentage. This is in 20. Last year we have available for iPads. Maryland gets a bigger percentage of revenue from the state than any Big Ten institution. Now it's close with Rutgers and Nebraska, but you can see you guys are first. But you're toward the bottom in other revenues, which is mostly grants. Tuition and fees, undergrad, you guys are 9th, so not that high compared to the others. But you have a very high ratio of out-of-state to in-state. You like to stick it to them. Like to stick it to the outside people. This was the discount rate's now 20%. This is what it was 2 years ago. Everyone's discount rate's gone up. You guys still have a low discount rate. So where you spend your money, salaries wise, you're 10th on instructional spending and salaries, 3rd on research, 5th combined, 6th institutional support, the 8.8%, kind of in the middle of the pack. Not that different in the spending. Graduation and Pell rates, I'll end this on this nice note. There you guys are with a 6-year graduation rate of 87%. 18% of your students have Pell Grants, which is very typical of the Big Ten. Middle of the pack there, but pretty high in graduation rates. And I'm going to stop there.
Wow, thanks so much. That was
Sure.
really incredible. I'd like to encourage people from the audience or in fact from the panelists to see if they have any questions. And here we have one right away from Karen saying,
So let me answer, that's a good one from Karen. So let me
Yeah.
answer that one. Biggest takeaway. To me, the biggest takeaways are that one, strong financial condition based on cash flows and reserves. But 2, priorities, right? Priorities of athletics and admin need to be questioned. Those are the biggest takeaways I have. But it's a strong place. It's a great place. I don't just say that. Look at these graduation rates. When you have this many students in a big public place like this with this much research going on, something's going right there. That's a very high graduation rate. And so a lot of good things are going on there. And I think that's great. So it's not like I'm thinking things are horrible, but the admin spending really does need to be addressed. And athletics, can you figure out a way to spend less money and still play in the Big Ten? I think you can. And I think that would free up more dollars for people who do the work and people who work with everyone there. That's my feeling.
So here's another tech message this is from Julie Green.
Yeah, I see the
She wants
question.
you to say more about the priorities of administration. What do you mean by too much money?
Yeah, it's two things. It's the number of admins and the pay to those admins. And we did that early on. Let me go to the slides. I think I have them in here. Where's my slides on admins? I'll get there in a second, I promise. Here. This time period and this time period. Too much. Why we increase the number of admins in both those time periods. And this just doesn't feel right to me. This just doesn't feel right. It's just, I'm not saying I am not saying they're bad people. I don't think anyone who works there are bad or evil human beings. I don't believe that. I do believe they make too much money. I really believe, and pardon me for saying this, that there are too many administrators making too much money. I believe that. I don't think you need as many. I just don't. And the academic support category, which we talked about, I think if you guys want some homework, what you can ask, the academic support category. Can the admin, can the people that work there break this up between the librarians and the deans so we can see what's really going on? And I don't live there and I don't work there. You guys would tell me, do you feel as if there's a lot of associate dean and dean types walking around that place?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's probably the case.
I know I speak for everybody in this sense.
So, but you know, the question that Julie asked, I think it was, I want to go.
Julie, yeah.
Julie, yeah, sorry. The question Julie asked, I mean, I want to know within that academic support category that we looked at early on. Let me go back to it right now. And so the question came up earlier, and someone joked that there's no way it was the librarians.
Well, and we only have 100 librarians roughly, and one of your graphs showed that.
Yeah. So in this category, look at academic support from 86 to 99 to 105 to 110 to 1. Who is in this $118 million? I want to know who these people are. I want to know who is getting paid $118 million at College Park in that category. I want to know how many deans you got. They, believe me, if I knew, I would, I used they're just not, but somebody knows. I mean, the data request is simple. A list and the salaries of everybody who makes up this category that you sent to iPads. I think it would take them about 43 seconds to print it out or send it to you in a PDF file. Now there is Nate, unfortunately that salary, they don't tell me exactly, they don't tell me how it maps into these categories. I want to know exactly how what Nate Beer just put in the chat, how those individual salaries map into these categories. Now we could sit there all day and try to do it ourselves, but somebody did it. Somebody who works in IRPA or the provost office did it already. Share it with us. Share it with the AAUP chapter. Share it with AFSCME. Share it with the graduate students. Share it with us. We want to know. And because the problem here is they are claiming that there are financial constraints. That do they ever tell you how much they love and respect what you do, but we just can't afford more? Do they ever give you that crap? Do they try throwing the attitude that we really would love to pay you more, we just can't? All day. I think I've got, I live in the Midwest and lived here for 25 years, but I think sometimes I need to spend more time with a sarcastic group back where you guys are. So yeah. So I want to know what makes up. Are there too many deans? Let's find out. I also, by the way, I'm hanging here, if I may, I want to know what's in here, and I want to get the 21 iPad salaries. I want to know what's in here, and I want to know who these people are. Yeah, the librarians made 71 and the management people made, so yeah, you could kind of parse them out, but there may be other people in here besides the librarians and the deans. I think that's most of it. But, you know, are they putting the advisors in here? I don't know. I want to know who's in here. I want to know. I don't need to, personally, I don't care what the
Tell
names
me,
are.
Howie,
Yeah.
who do we ask again? Who do we
You
send that
add, the
request
people
to?
who do this, the people who submit this typically are an IRPA, Institutional Research, Institutional Research Planning and Assessment. And they typically report to the provost. Now, the provost office, I'm sorry to tell you guys this, they're not going to be your friends all that often. I don't know if you guys deal with the provost office at all in any of your jobs or have worked there and know the people that work there. You have the people who work in IRPA, I don't know them. I know the types. They tend to be people who just like to help and are they're submitting their work, they're doing their work, and they don't have a political agenda. The people in the provost office have a political agenda. That's my view. So. Okay, the question that Mark asked, do we think that includes contractual? Yeah, I personally want to know how it all maps. I want to know how look, there's $1 billion of salary paid, $1 billion in 2020, and probably about the same now. $1 billion in salaries went. Yeah, it's a lot of Excel rows, but you know what? It's not that many. It's really not that many. And if you and they were really interested in finding out, and we want to look at the trend over time, because we looked at the trend over time. And this is what we saw. We saw that this is the category that's, you guys, someone even noticed it before I even showed this. Before I even showed this chart, someone said, oh my, look at that. Someone saw it already. You could see it by looking at the numbers that something's going on here. Now, is it reclassification? I don't know. Let's just find out who's in this thing. Let's just find out what's going on here.
That sounds great. You know, I think it's 3:30. Why don't we take a pause to clap and let most of the people go? And if anybody wants to linger and ask a last question or two, that's fine. And I'm going to stop the recording, but if everybody wants to clap or put huzzah or thanks into the chat, that would be great. And I'm going to stop the recording and say goodbye to everyone. But if you want to stay and hang out and chat, please do so.
You're welcome, Sam.
That was really amazing.
Thank you.
Really wonderful.
Yeah, I just wanted to say one thing before we wrapped up. Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you, Howard, for doing this so much. I just wanted to say one thing about next steps. So first of all, it's posted in the chat and I'll put there again. Do join our email list so you can hear about new things that we're doing, about the next steps on this. Also, definitely consider becoming a member of AAUP National. As I'm
Yay!
as I'm sure I don't need to tell you all, higher education is under assault from multiple angles, and so it's important that we build a strong collective organization and presence to fight back. And lastly, directly following up on this, I just want to say that one of the things that we're going to be doing come the fall semester is we're actually going to take this presentation, distill it into something a little bit shorter that we can present at the departmental level.
It better be shorter than this.
Yeah.
Yeah, present at the departmental level, present to any faculty groups that you're a part of. And we're interested in basically getting out to meet people down at, sorry, I've got some ambulances in the background here, at the departmental level to present this to people who may not have been able to be here. And also to hear about how these financial issues are impacting you at the departmental or kind of faculty group unit level. So we'll be sending something out about this, but please do consider helping us set up some of those as we've started.
And we're gonna release the actual data as well. Like next Tuesday or Wednesday, weren't we talking about, Matt?
Monday. Yeah.
Monday next week.
Monday. And then we'll have a sort of a wrap up early next week too, for anyone who has further questions. Anything else? Any other questions? Anybody in the chat?